All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Families for the Return to the Classroom. Christina Lipperini is our presenter this evening. Just some Zoom etiquette. If you would please keep yourself on mute. You can put questions in the chat, but we will have opportunity for Q&A at the end of the program. So welcome, everyone. Chris, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I thought I'd start out by just telling you a little bit about my background and a few different roles I have held or currently hold that have brought me to this presentation. I think probably the most important role is that I am a parent, and I have a son who is currently at Mount Tabor School. He's going to be going into 5th grade. And I also have a preschooler. So as much as this conversation is based on K through 12, I will be touching upon some developmental things to keep in mind for our younger kids as well. So I think we all develop some cred just by being parents and having our parents' gut and parent instincts. So that is something I definitely am bringing to this presentation. I also am a licensed psychologist and licensed professional counselor, and I've held various roles, different settings, working with individuals across the lifespan. So I've worked with children who've experienced abuse or trauma, all the way up to working with older adults in assisted living. So I've gotten to see a lot of things, but really settled on working with, younger folks. And obviously with having 2 children, I can't help but gravitate towards what's been going on for them, especially in the last year and a half or so. So I just want to let you know that I've been in the trenches with you. And also, as much as I'm presenting all of this information and these 10 strategies, I just need to be transparent. Shocker, they don't always work great for me. I don't always do them perfectly because we're all human, and we just have to figure out what's going to work for us. So I come to this presentation fumbling at times. I'm sure if we had a show of hands, there have been times where we've all wanted to cry or have cried during the last year and a half of our children's education. So I've been there too. I currently am adjunct faculty at Seton Hall. So in that role, I teach classes for counselors in training and school counselors in training. So I spend some of my time really working with students who are prepared to work in the school system. So I always kind of have that as a backdrop for the work that I do. And among the classes that I teach are human development. So that's something that I'll be talking a bit today of, not going really heavy into it, but giving you what you need to know to consider where your child is or your student developmentally. I'm aware that we might not just have parents here, but grandparents, aunts, uncles, other caregivers of just what to expect. So I'll be using the word student. So what you might be able to expect from your student based upon their age or where they are developmentally. So that's a little bit about me. I also have a couple volunteer roles that I'm probably going to infuse into this. One of them is that I am on my PTA. I'm the vice president of my PTA. So I'm pretty involved in my school system, in my individual school. And I'm also the past president of the Friends of the Parsippany Library. So I also bring into that a real love of the library and appreciation for everything that our library offers. In fact, today I went to the library and saw Jean as I was picking up some books, and that includes some books I'm going to touch on today of some things that you can use with your students that might be helpful in getting them ready for the return back or in those first couple weeks. So I know we've got a few weeks until school start, so I think this is the ideal time to start thinking about some things we can do. We have the luxury of a little time to ease in and experiment with some of these. So I'm going to get us started. I'm offering 10 strategies today. Let's see. But I have a couple goals from that. The first one is really to normalize any questions you have, concerns, and also hopes you have for the upcoming year for your students. I know that the last year and a half, we've seen many different configurations of what school has looked like for us individually and collectively. So from that, we have a lot of feelings and thoughts. So all of them are valid. We'll talk a bit about that. And tonight, I really want each of you to come away. I'm giving you 10 So I thought realistically, from 10, you should be able to find 2 actionable strategies that you think could work for your student and for you. And again, it's the fit, not just for the student, but for you, things that you think you realistically could do to, integrate into your routine that you think would be helpful for you and your student. So out of 10, maybe 2 are going to work for you. So from this point on, the rest of the presentation, I'm going to be sharing almost like I grew up with Cliff Notes. And now I know we're on to Spark Notes for our younger generation. But I've done the heavy lifting of research for you and just compiled, the highlights of 10 different strategies of some takeaways you can have to get started. So again, not too research heavy, but I've summarized some things that can be helpful as you start thinking about, us getting back to school. And I feel like it is us, right? It's not just our kids, but all of us. So let's see. I have this link here, but I don't think it's going to work. It's a little too high tech. So if anybody in the audience wants to share, what are some feelings you're having? I'm going to take our temperature. I know we're used to in like every building we go into now having our temperature taken or being asked what our temperature is. I want to take the temperature of our group tonight, our emotional temperature. So how are you feeling about students going back to in-seat learning full-time? Politics aside, because I'm more about your feelings of how do you feel about students going back to school, your student?
I'm too much excited.
Excited. Okay. Very excited. Yes.
Very,
Okay.
very. And my kids are also very excited because last year they did their school virtually. So now they are also very excited to go to their school, and that's it.
Okay. So for you, your students have been out, your kids have been out for a while. So this is a big transition back, right?
Yes.
Yes. And how old are your kids?
One is 7 years old, and second one is 9 years old.
Okay, great. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll keep that in mind as we talk. Okay, anybody
Yeah.
else? Anybody else excited? A lot of excitement in the room?
So
Yeah.
Jessica said, nervous that we won't last, but hopeful.
Okay. So I want to validate mixed feelings too. I have mixed feelings too. Our kids probably have mixed feelings, right? Like you can be more than one thing at the same time. You can be nervous, but also hopeful or excited. So, you can have a pie chart and be 80% one thing, 20% the other. So yeah, Jessica, absolutely. Hillary, did you have your hand up? Hillary is my neighbor, full disclosure. So.
Yes, I just had to remember to unmute myself. I'm very excited because I have a sophomore who has not been in a high school classroom yet because he was completely virtual for freshman year. So he's excited to see his friends in person again, and I'm excited for him to finally be able to get the full high school experience.
Yeah, great. And I think that brings up the point too of, for some of our students, that year that we've been away, or maybe some of our audience, maybe the students have gone back part-time, but they really haven't had the full experience. And some of them may have transitioned to a new school and not really been there for a part of that experience yet. And that's a big deal. Yeah. All right. Okay, so let's get down to it then. How are our kids doing? The good news, and again, I've pulled a lot of research here, and I hope this alleviates some anxiety. What we know from previous events, things like Hurricane Katrina, and what we've studied so far about COVID and the pandemic, including what's coming out of Italy and France and other places, is that the majority of kids will have these mild or transitory reactions and then kind of get back to baseline or recover fully or almost fully from the experience. Even with Hurricane Katrina, children who had symptoms of PTSD, of some trauma or depression, those symptoms did decrease with time and with treatment, which brings me to the third point, which is if kids do have persistent symptoms, the good news is that intervention is effective. So seeking help pays dividends. And I have here, in addition to Hillary, Warren Ververs, her husband is one of our healthcare heroes working in mental health here for St. Clair's. and can speak to that too, of that, with intervention, especially earlier intervention, we're going to see that symptoms can be addressed and that we can get students back to social and academic functioning. So the key is, and I'll end the presentation with talking about some things that we do want to look for, that would be an indicator of this is bigger than you and that you do need to seek help, and totally expected that some of our students will need that during this time of COVID. So again, the good news is the majority of our kids are pretty resilient and will be able to recover from their symptoms, either with some support from us or some professional support. And our teachers, I believe, are getting training about how to support our students as they come back to school. So we have a team, and our teachers have been tremendous allies in Parsippany this past year and a half and continue to go above and beyond. So want to thank them as well. Okay. So tip number one is really important. How are we doing? Because how we're doing impacts how our students are doing. So even our littlest ones that we think aren't picking up anything from us, they're watching, they're seeing, and they're making sense of it. And our youngest ones they have a lot of gaps in what they're taking in, and they fill them in probably inaccurately. So it's really important for us to think about what we're doing, what we're talking about. So what are what are the little ears taking in? An example for me would be early on in the pandemic, my husband and I would talk, we would check the news, and we'd be in the living room updating, like, I just saw this, I heard this, now we're up to 500,000 people, not realizing that our 9-year-old son is listening to everything that we're saying and trying to make sense of that, which led to him for a while really being afraid to leave our property, because he put together a picture of what was going on that was based on just kind of patches of information he was picking up from us. So being aware of not just what you're watching and what's on in the background, but what are you talking about? So what are you talking about with your partner, on the phone with your friends? What are they hearing is really important. That doesn't mean that you can't talk about it at all, but just be mindful of how much too, especially, at the beginning. I think a lot of us were watching a lot of news, or, it was on in the background. We were talking about it an awful lot. Our kids are listening to that. But right now they're also listening to how we feel about returning to in-person learning. So their attitude about that is really shaped by our attitude about that. So if, we're talking on the side about Facebook and, how now they're saying this or now they're saying that, it's okay if we have those views, but just be aware of what your kids are picking up from you, of how much you're talking about and the attitude you're displaying. The last one, how are you coping? I know we're all used to this analogy of, and it is true, but, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to take care of our kids. But they're also looking at how we're coping. Do we have a short fuse? Are we yelling more? Are we turning to alcohol? Are we not leaving the house? Are we not eating well? Those things they're picking up too. So they need to see how we're coping. And, part of that is we're not always going to cope well. But if we can talk about that with our kids when that's happening and saying, I've noticed today I have a really short fuse. I think I need to do something about that. I know I do better when I get outside. Let's go do something. Then they see us learning how to effectively cope, and then they can model that. So again, you have permission not to be perfect because you're not going to be, but it's what you do with that. So if you're having difficulty coping, it's really great if your kids can see you working through and learning how to cope and trying different things. And preview, I've got more on coping. It's one of our 10 strategies that I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes. So again, just be mindful. Your kids are watching you. Okay. So again, you don't have to be perfect, but in those moments when you're not perfect are opportunities for your kids to learn. So, instead of being critical on yourself, that could actually be an opportunity for them to grow and for you to grow too. Okay. Oh, jumped way ahead. What did we go to 4? Okay. I don't know what happened there. My numbers are off. But our next one is getting our kids connected. So when they're back at school, how are we going to take advantage of that opportunity, especially for kids who have been out for a while? Something that's really great, not even if you have clinical depression, but just if you're feeling out of sorts, or, somewhat anxious, is really to increase your social involvement. So for our students, to encourage them to seek out extracurricular opportunities, they may have kind of hovered online and looked at things, or you may notice that, your student has been interested in coding this past year, or even look at what they've been looking at on YouTube and talk to them about that. You might find out they're interested in something that maybe they can get involved in a club or an extracurricular activity that would foster that interest and also increase their interaction with their peers. So that's really important as they get back to school. One of the goals, the first goal is really for them to acclimate, right? Get to know their teachers' names and routines. But then the second goal is really to get them socially connected. So keep looking for those opportunities, including, I mentioned YouTube, but really just watch your kids and see what they're interested in. Okay, and once they are connected, we want them to stay connected at school. So part of that is also how we are connected to the school. So as somebody on the PTA, I'm on these, Facebook chats for my school, so I know what's going on. I get PTA news. I know we get a lot of digital backpack stuff or, things from the district, but make sure to check them because that might have important information about some things going on, whether it's at the school, through the library, things that your kids can take advantage of. Okay. And it really is important for them to get connected because not only does it help them develop relationships with other people, which I know a lot of us have been concerned that that's been lacking in the last year and a half, but it also helps them develop a positive self-image. And that's something that we're concerned about across different developmental periods. So that they get to see themselves reflected through other people in their relationships. So we really want them to get connected as soon as possible. Okay. All right, which brings us to coping. I mentioned coping a couple minutes ago, and this is a big one. If we can get our kids and ourselves a coping toolkit, it can be really empowering for our kids. Jean and I were talking before the program started. We always hear about helicopter parents in the past, but we've got kind of a new style of parent, which is the parent who cuts problems off at the pass so that the student doesn't experience them at all or isn't exposed to hardship or adversity. And that's a disservice to the student because developmentally, we grow by challenges and overcoming them or learning how to face them. So instead of, helping our student avoid every challenge, we need to help them cope with challenges that come up. That equips them for life. These are skills that we all need. So there are 3 different kind of categories of coping, different styles. And the first one is emotion focused. You may notice yourself in one of these, one or more of the styles, and you may realize that your students are already doing one or more of these, but these are different ones that we can think about. And the first, emotion focused, is where the person is really using strategies to manage their emotions. And those are things like journaling, talking to a professional. Ants are automatic negative thoughts. We all have them. I could do a total, series on those, right, Warren? That's a class in and of itself. Mindfulness, gratitude. These are all different ways of addressing our emotions in a positive way. And you can just Google or search it up, as my son says, things like mindfulness or gratitude for kids, and you'll find some free, you don't need to pay a lot of money for this stuff. There's some very easy to access strategies, including just teaching kids how to breathe, of deep breathing when they're feeling anxious about something. Today at the library, I happened to pick up just these 2 books. So I've got this one with Cookie Monster, How to Be a Calm Monster. So this is a really great book that really normalizes some things, including I can't sleep. Here's some things I can do to help me sleep. So books are a great non-threatening way to introduce ideas and strategies to kids. I found this other book, which is great for all of our elementary school kids. It's actually part of a series, Breathe Like a Bear, and this one is Peaceful Like a Panda. So this also has mindfulness strategies that kids can use. And this is, again, a very non-threatening way to introduce some of those strategies. So that's emotion focused, but we also use problem focused strategies like what are behaviors? What are things we can do to address a problem? So Hillary and Warren, Hillary mentioned their son is going to high school for the first time in person. So a student might be nervous about, I don't know how I'm going to get from class A to class B. I don't know where my locker is. Am I going to be able to carry all my books? What am I going to do? So problem focused coping would be, all right, well, let's get a map and let's figure out the route you're going to take, or maybe can we find a way to have access to the school so you can kind of walk it out, things like that. Or if your student has an IEP or a 504 plan and they're concerned about how things are going to be back to school, okay, well, let's look at your plan. Let's look at your strategies that you have to address these things. That can be really helpful. So again, what are concrete things we can do to remove the stressor or address the stressor would be problem focused coping. And then the one that kind of is like the one that doesn't get the spotlight a lot, but I think is important also, is meaning focused coping. How do we find meaning in everything that's happened for us, including for us as adults? What meaning can we make out of the last year and a half? What has come of it that has helped us, maybe helped us clarify our values or strengthen certain relationships? Like what comes out of this? How do you make sense of the last year and a half? Do I expect a 5-year-old to be talking about that in these really, eloquent ways? No, but it may be that you talk about things like, it was really great for us to have some of that time together as a family. We got to, really spend a lot more time with mom or dad because they weren't in the office as much. Like that was great. We were able to do that. Or, for kids, it can also be, I realized like I was stronger than I thought I was. Like I dealt with a lot of different changes. For me as an adult, I'm stronger than I thought I was. I dealt with a lot of curveballs I didn't expect, right? All of us have dealt with a lot of things outside of our control, and we're here today. So that's maybe the meaning we get out of this last year and a half. So that's meaning focused coping. So it also may be that students now appreciate their friendships and seeing their friends, or being in school and being face to face with their teacher. They may have much more gratitude and appreciation for those things now that they're not, now that they're able to come back. So we miss what we didn't have. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? So that can tap into gratitude as well. Right. Okay. This is the perfect time of year, whether we're in COVID times or non-COVID times, of establishing and maintaining a daily routine. Mine has fallen apart. In full disclosure, any semblance to a routine this past week, if you looked at my house, there is none. So I know it's time to bring it back. For myself too, right? It's not just for our students, but for ourselves. It feels better to have a sense of predictability. It's a sense of control in some ways too, right? Like I know that I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm going to have breakfast and get dressed, and then we're going to do X, Y, or Z. So having those basic things, including that bedtime routine, it doesn't mean, I want to make the distinction between routine versus schedule. So when I'm talking about routine, it's the order of events. A schedule would be, you got to be in bed by 9 o'clock. And you read from 8:30 to 8:45, and then you brush your teeth from 8:45 to 8:47. That's a schedule. Routine is the order in which we do things. And that's much more realistic for a lot of us to maintain. And that can be really important for our students as they go back. It gives them this sense of control and predictability. They know what to expect. And when the whole world and what school's going to look like feels unpredictable, what we can control is really important. So keeping that in place for our kids is really important. Controlling what we can in general is a really important way of coping with things. So how do we explain what's going on to our kids? How do we explain what to expect when they get back to school, or when there are changes of maybe, a month ago we were thinking our kids aren't going to wear masks at school, and now we have to pivot and explain to them that they have to wear masks. So there are changes that may come along the way that we need to explain to kids. So how do we do that? I came up with my own acronym, which is AHA. So AHA explanations. The first part of that is like, just keep it age appropriate. Okay? You would explain things differently to a 5-year-old than you would your 15-year-old. In general, our younger kids, they really just want to know that they're going to be kept safe and that you've got this, and basic, simple information that they need to know. Things about hand washing, and that they need to wear a mask, and that their teachers and their parents and caregivers are going to make sure that they stay safe. That's what they need to know. our older elementary school kids into middle school, they're going to be coming to you with probably some misinformation, right? Because they're kind of watching things or hearing things from their friends, and things, it's like a game of telephone where things get misconstrued. And again, they're filling in those gaps. So that's where it's important for you to separate reality from rumor for them and to give them the correct information. And they're going to want to know about, well, what might happen? Are we maybe going to have to stay home from school at some point? What would that look like? So being prepared to talk to them about, possibilities and subsequent plans. Now, when you've got your upper middle and high school students, they're more mature, emotionally and cognitively, where they want to discuss things in more depth, and that's appropriate. And you're going to want to refer them to, reputable sites if they want information, instead of your YouTubers that, you're going to want to refer to some news sources or other things that they can be tracking if they want information. And this is really also a nice opportunity to have discussions with them and have shared decision making. Like, well, where are we going to feel comfortable going? Who are we going to, have, in our circle at times? Or what are you comfortable doing and what are you not comfortable doing? Why is that? So you can really also help them develop decision making skills by talking about that together. So keep it age appropriate and let your children guide you in their needs. If you listen to them, you'll get a sense of what their understanding is, as well as what their questions are. So, for example, today I talked to my son in the car and I explained to him I'm doing this presentation, and I said, do you have any questions about school? And he said, am I going to have to wear a mask? And I said, to start the school year? Yes. And how do you feel about that? Because of course I'm a therapist, so my kid is used to the question, how do you feel about that? And he said, I don't like wearing it, but do you think maybe like by winter or after winter, we might not have to wear them anymore? And I said, I'm hoping that, some things will be in place that's a possibility. And what would that be like for you? Again, therapist question. He said, well, it'd be really nice because on the playground, I wouldn't have to wear it and I could see my friends' faces. But then we also talked about, well, even when you did have to wear a mask, could you take it off at times? And he said, the end of the year on the playground, we could, and that was good, recess. So again, letting your kid lead you, of understanding what's going on in their heads. It may be very different than what you think, including kids in those elementary years, that misinformation they have, you're going to need to correct it. They may believe, we're going to need to wear masks, forever, or we're going to go on lockdown again, or whatever it might be. Again, letting them know about possibilities. We can't offer false reassurance, but letting them know where things are right now. It's kind of like Goldilocks, just the right amount of information. So that's our first A in the AHA. Our second is to be honest. And this is tough for us. This is tough for parents and people who are really empathic. It's really hard not to offer false reassurance that everything's going to be fine, that they're never going to be at home again, that the masks are going to be off by winter or just before you know it. We don't know that. So we can't offer false reassurance. And if we do, we kind of, how can that backfire? Any thoughts on that? What if we offer this reassurance and then things don't go that way? Like, what do you think the downside of that is?
Well, certainly children do not like to be lied to. And I think that they may misconstrue what you said and feel that you lied to them. And that's, that's terrible. I mean, that's just terrible.
It's trust, right? Like it undermines trust. If comes from a good place. And believe me, as a counselor, I talk to this about counselors in training too. We hate seeing people struggle. It's hard to see people suffering and sad, and you want to make everything better. And as parents and caregivers, we want to make it all better. But we can offer them a sense of safety. We can offer them our concern and, again, shared decision making, and that we're going to keep them safe. But we can't talk about the rest of the world and predict all of that. So being just honest enough and not offering that false sense of reassurance of everything's going to be okay, by October 1st or whatever it is. And empathizing with that's really hard not to know. It's hard for us. It's hard for them. And being just honest enough. We don't want our kids to become the sounding board for all our anxieties and fears too. It's okay to let our kids know this is hard for us too. We're excited and nervous, but we don't want to share everything with them. You don't want to unpack all your fears and worries and put that on them of, it's been really hard for me. And I'm just terrified like about my parents' health and your health and how you're going to be developmentally, like all of that. It's too much for kids. So again, you can model that it's okay to have feelings, mixed feelings about things, but don't put all your stuff on them. I think most of us know that. Hopefully find somebody that you can unpack all of that with and vent to, but not your kids. Even our teenagers who seem like, they can handle a whole lot, they're still kids. And they're still growing and they need to be kept, a sense of safety too. And again, last one in my aha is accurate, like stay up to date. Our kids, like I mentioned, may have misinformation, so give them accurate information. Especially like as we're talking about Delta and other things, they may have misinformation. So, try to clarify that again at an age appropriate level. And there's lots of stuff online that you can find about how to talk to kids about each thing that's coming up. So as we get back to school, another step is setting goals. So with kids and for us, especially if our kids have been out of school, like some of you mentioned for, a year and a half, pretty much when we look at the fall, the spring of that previous year, is setting small goals for return. So the first thing would be things like getting used to your schedule, learning your teachers' names, learning where you need to go, learning, what supplies you need, getting all your supplies organized. Those are the first goals. And then I talked about the social goals. So those are micro goals, small, realistic goals, because nothing feels better than actually achieving things. So you want to set our students up for success. So small, manageable goals, they're realistic, and have them take part in it too. So after the first day of school, asking them how things are going and, well, what would be something that you would like to accomplish this first week back? And I encourage you even to do this before they get to school. Like, okay, you haven't been to high school in the high school building yet as a full-time student. You may have been there for other things, but like, what would be good how would you feel good about your first week there? What would happen that you would feel good? Okay, if you were able to master something or feel pretty confident in it, and engage them in setting those goals. And, with your younger students, especially ones who are really anxious about return, communicating with teachers about this. And, as much as they're able to, of engaging them in that, of saying, for my son, James really needs help getting organized. And that's our goal for this first week, for his desk to be organized so he's set up for success. So helping, the teacher may be able to help with that. And that way, we've got a team working towards those small, manageable goals. James hates being my case study, but he's not hearing this, so it's okay. Okay. Doing your research. So the best way also to help your student with their goals is to also be aware of what's happening. So it could be things like, well, what's drop-off going to look like? Those emails coming from the district or emails you're getting from the individual teacher that they're assigned to, of understanding, okay, well, this is what drop-off's going to look like. It's different than it looked before. This is what you can expect is helpful. So that can alleviate anxiety too. Letting them know any details about how things are going to look helps them feel a sense of control. Okay. Before I get to this, I have no idea where my one slide went. So I'm going to try to go back and find this really great slide I had that somehow got cut or put by the wayside. Let me see if I can find my picture at least for you all. Okay. All right. Let's find control. All right. Okay, here it is. Okay, let me go back to share screen, new share. Okay. Okay, can you see this picture?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is, I'm glad I'm fine. I'm apologize that 2 of my slides were missing, so our numbers were off. I completely own the 10 that I went from 1 to 4. So now I'm swooping back in and get in. So I'm modeling things not being perfect, and that's okay. But I really did want to cover this of for us and for our kids, controlling what we can and acknowledging the things we do not have control over. This was early in the pandemic, but I think it still holds. Toilet paper at the store, we've got that now. But the rest of these are pretty relevant. Like, we can't control how long this is going to last. We can do our individual part. And I know we all have lots of feelings about other people's choices, how others are acting or reacting, but we don't have control over that. We don't have control over the action of others or their motives. We can't predict what can happen, but there are things we can do, right? Like I talked about, limiting our access to news. How many of you, as we started to hear about the uptick of things, started noticing, checking the news more, being on social media, getting sucked into rabbit holes of time, looking at this stuff? I mean, I was guilty of that. My husband had to tell me to turn it off because I started to notice myself getting anxious and looking for more and more information, and it wasn't helpful. That's something we can control. We can control, and our kids can control how we manage the time. What can we do when we're home? What can we do when we're at school? If we're worried, what can we do to manage the worry that we have? How can we follow the things that we should be doing? Are we wearing our mask if we're supposed to? We wash our hands. Not what can't we do, but also what can we do? Well, like for my kids, at a certain point in the pandemic, it was like a big outing to go to the library. And we celebrated that. That was like a really great thing. Like, what can you guys still do? Especially this fall. And I'm not going to be a predictor of how everything goes, but we can go outside. There's going to be a lot of great fall things, and the outdoors that we can enjoy, and playgrounds and things that we can still do those things. We can control that. If our kids are bummed about masks in school, and again, I'm deferring to the CDC and all this stuff, but if there are opportunities to be outside with their peers where they can be running and playing and unmasked, and that's something that feels good to you and them, and it's safe, then maybe those are things you control and pursue. Again, extracurricular activities. I miss the way things were. Okay, but what can you control? All right, you want to take a coding class? That's something we can do. How can we make the best of things? So again, I think for us as adults too, it's really important for us to think about what we have control over. I think we spend a whole lot of time looking at what we don't have control over, and we get very amplified feelings about that. And our time is more productive to be put into what we can control. And it also is great to teach our kids that. So I wanted to make sure I got to the control piece of things. All right, let me go back, and I want to share. Let's get back to that presentation. All right. Okay. Take me a minute here. Okay, let's see, new share. Okay, here we go. Are we back? Can you see my presentation again?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jean. Okay, so one of the most important things as we get towards the end of the presentation is also asking for help. Maybe I think, we want to think we can do it all on our own, but if you've been looking at, everything we're seeing in the news, yeah, people are struggling. I know so many, friends of mine or people in the community that, they're reaching out for support. And I think that's great. And hopefully we're going to have even more school-based support this coming year for our students and families. And certainly, reaching out should be encouraged. I love the fact that stigma is being decreased. People are talking about that, yeah, it makes sense that people are struggling during this time, including our young people. So let's talk about some of the risk factors of some of our students who might be more at risk for those symptoms that might need to receive additional intervention, right? We talked about at the beginning, the good news is that treatment is really effective. Some of our students are more at risk for developing some of those symptoms that need to be treated. And those would be, our students who already pre-pandemic or during the course of the pandemic have developed severe anxiety, depression, or suicidal behaviors. They're more at risk as we, go back to school, and that's a major transition. When we talk about adjustments, they can be positive, but also stressful at the same time. So keeping in mind that events like, returning to school, new classes, those are a lot of changes. And with that can come, anxiety and more depression. But again, with intervention can be helpful. So just watching our students that already are experiencing those symptoms, making sure that we're watching how they're doing with that adjustment back. So again, if there's pre-existing mental health concerns, being, a little extra attention, making sure the transition is going smoothly or supports are in place. Students who've had prior traumatic experiences or abuse, including bullying at school, let's not minimize that some of our students may not be excited to go back to school. For some students, being at home has been like a safe haven. So going back to school and bullying is, really a concern for them, and more symptoms may develop. So if your student has a history of difficulty with peers, bullying, just being aware that you're, working with the school supports you have of the school counselor, the school social worker or team, of putting it on the radar if you're noticing that your student is having difficulty on the way back. Students with learning differences may have a lot of anxiety about back to in-seat learning, especially as they've kind of figured out how to do it at home, or have been with mom and dad or grandma and grandpa who's been there to support them. Students with 504 plans or IEPs may find it challenging to go back and figure out how that's going to look in seat with a new teacher, new year. Students who are experiencing family instability might find it also really stressful going back to school, just because of what's going on at home. So the same problems that were there before the pandemic are still here for students, including grief and loss. So students have lost people to COVID. They've also experienced the death of members of their community or family outside of COVID. So being aware that we have grieving students coming back into school. Those are all risk factors that we need to look at. So let's talk about some of the specific behavior that you might just want to be more attuned to. Of if you're seeing these type of things, it's an indication to contact a professional. And with the caveat of, like, if these things are happening for 2 or more weeks and these are changes from previous functioning, then contacting professionals. So examples of, if preschoolers have been thumb sucking for the last 3 years, that's not a new behavior. But if that's a regression for them, like they haven't been doing that for the past year, and then all of a sudden with a return to preschool, you're noticing things like regression, like they're sucking their thumb, or they've got their pacifier again, or they're wetting their bed again. Those things are, indicative of a regression, which is probably in response to stress. Those of us with elementary school children, you might see your kids, again, acting a little bit more immature, being clingy with you, especially after school or before school. Sleep disturbance, probably, you might see some problems with concentration, irritability. An important thing to note with a lot of our kids is they're really good at keeping it together at school, and then they come home to their safe person, and then you kind of get like the purging of all that stress and everything they've been keeping together all day, which is great that they feel safe with you, and being there for them is great. But just keep in mind, like, it's kind of it's the culmination of the whole day. They've kept it together and worked really hard, and you're their safe person now that they can express this to. For your adolescents, you're also going to see some of that coming from them. The eating and sleeping disturbances, part of that we kind of chalk up to adolescence. But again, if this is a change from the past, that's really important to keep in mind. If they're picking fights with you or their friends and distancing themselves, that's another heads up that you might need to, get more people in your support network. Also, not to minimize for all ages, including adults, physical complaints. I've invested in a lot of Band-Aids. My kids, one of the things I know that they're struggling and they're having a hard time with something is all of a sudden it's, I hurt myself. I need another bandage. Seeking kind of that reassurance, like they're physically hurt, is a way of getting kind of caretaking. So your kids may complain of stomach aches, headaches. And of course you want to check that out, but those are also, our kids sometimes manifest their problems through physical complaints. So if you're seeing a lot of those, and our school nurses are our friends here, if our kids are frequent flyers, they're going to be letting us know and talking to us about, noticing that, Tom is in the nurse's office almost every day complaining of a headache. That's when they're going to notice and want to talk with other school professionals as well as us about what might be going on. So, that's totally normal. And again, can be addressed with some additional support. And I couldn't end this without also talking about ourselves. So we may not suck our thumbs, but we may get irritable and withdraw and have sleep and eating disturbances. We're not immune to all these things too. So I just wanted to put a plug in for us also taking care of ourselves and noticing when we're experiencing a lot of symptoms that we are also deserving of help. Okay, right? Not just so we can be better caregivers, but we deserve to also be doing well, in and of ourselves outside of the role of caregiver. So making sure that we're also making time for if we need professional help. So I hope you were able to find one or two things that might be helpful. And I just wanted to open up the time now for the rest of we have about 10 minutes. If any of you had any questions or anything that you just wanted to share reaction to what we talked about.
Hey, Chris, would you take off your screen share so we can
Sure.
see everyone, please?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I think we have everyone. I don't know if anybody has any questions or even any comments. They are both very much welcome. Please feel free to unmute yourself,
Yeah.
or you can put it in the chat if you're not
I've got
comfortable.
the chat on.
Yep.
One thing that in my 2 slides that were missing, one thing that I didn't, one slide that didn't make the cut for whatever reason was about talking to our kids. And part of that is, your kids best and how to talk to them. Like, I really want you to trust yourselves and learning how they process things, how they want to talk to you. We've got to be comfortable with talking about different feelings, including ones that alarm us, if we're going to be able to talk to our kids about them. So like, you've got to get really comfortable with a wide array of feelings, including some that might be scary to you. And another part of that is those of you who have older kids, there was a pediatrician who talked about raindrops when you talk to your kids. It may not be this beautiful sit down conversation, but a raindrop here and there. And even with our younger kids, like my son doesn't want to sit down and have a 10-minute conversation. So a raindrop of, so I understand this, I learned this. And if you want to talk about it, I'm here. Letting them know, like, I'm available, and then letting it sit with them is a good raindrop approach. If you kind of scatter those throughout your time with your kids, they may come to you when they need it, but you got to put it out there. And so instead of trying to, storm in with a big conversation, raindrops might be a better way to go.
Zoom user, I saw you raising your hand. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I know I don't have any question, but it was a nice presentation by Ms. Chris, and nicely explained. And actually, from last 1.5 year, it's been a very difficult time for all of us. As this was a very new type of situation, condition, we have to be inside our home. But still, I am so much happy that being inside our home, we are able to doing things electronically, like
Yeah,
we are using Zoom and we are interacting with each other. We are uh, like talking to each other. We are releasing our stress, and our kids are getting a chance to learn in this situation also. Like they did the whole year. They they passed the whole year learning virtually also. They learned something. I know it's there is it's not so much detailed. They got so they get so much knowledge in person, but still they did very good virtually also. And yeah, it's been a long time, so they are excited, too much excited to go outside. And yes, this is very true. As a parent, we can teach them, but this is also very true. We cannot teach everything. They have to get experience how they will get interact to each how to interact with other people. So social knowledge they will
absolutely.
get in group only. So this is very important. So yeah.
Yeah, it is. And, I think that I've seen stuff about, academic, maybe we haven't reached certain goals, but that social piece, if I had to
Yeah,
choose between, my son or daughter reaching certain percentile with, being on track for math, reading, or being
yeah,
a socially competent young person that has good relationships, I would pick the social relationships and their well-being any day. That's harder to gain and regain than the academics,
yes,
Uh,
yes.
and
agree.
I love the way you're talking. It's like you're a gratitude journal, you're a walking gratitude journal. And that's a great
Thank you.
skill that you can teach your kids and model of like, isn't this great? I'm excited. I'm so grateful we were still able to learn. I'm still so grateful that you're going to get to be with kids again. Like that's all
Yeah, same.
gratitude stuff.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was I enjoyed very much, and it was very interactive too.
Oh, I'm glad.
So once again, thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. Good luck to
Yeah,
your kids and to you.
thank you. Thank you.
There's another source that I put in the chat, biglifejournal.com, that I
Mhm.
had looked, and like you're saying a lot of the same stuff, which is really good, which is really true. Being like like having gratitude for what you have instead of missing what you don't have, and it's just getting a better sense of feel can lead our children to like self-actualization, like to make them happy with being themselves.
Yeah, and it's that balance, right, Jessica? Of like, it's okay to be sad
Yeah.
or mourn those things, but also to look at what we have. It's not being Susie Sunshine, but every day we can see small things to be grateful for. And research has shown that really does help us build up resilience and affect our attitude and our well-being. Big Life Journal has some great freebies too. If you follow them on social media, you get these free downloads of some pretty neat posters and things that are visually appealing for kids. And I think sometimes adults, maybe we should start with this stuff before we put ourselves into these big books. Start with
I think that's how I got started.
yeah, like especially when we're having trouble, like keep it simple for kids and us. So yeah, Big Life Journal is a great one. Mindfulness stuff, there's so many free downloads for mindfulness and deep breathing, just belly breath, of reading about that. And I think also for students, that's a really nice thing that they can do to cope that nobody knows they're doing, so they don't feel self-conscious about taking a deep breath. Nobody needs to know that. There's also one you can do with your hand, which is just breathe in to the top of each finger and then breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. So that's something kind of sensory they could use with their hand at their desk, that nobody really notices they're doing. So, part of your backpack for back to school is just, some strategies like that. I asked my son, well, what would you recommend to people? He says, oh, fidgets. So for him, that's something that works. But again, everybody finding, something that works for them. Every kid every adult, it's a different toolkit. So playing around with it can be fun and empowering.
I noticed that the Ververs have their mute button off, so I didn't know if there was something that you'd like to ask or say.
Yeah, just a couple other tips, Chris. You really covered some good practical hands-on information for people. The other piece that we've been trying to do a lot of over the pandemic is also try to teach parents how to ask better questions. I don't get stuck with the like, hey, how was school today? And then I'm like, oh,
they're gonna close down. No.
What I meant to ask was, hey, tell me something you learned in math class today. Hey, what were you reading in that English book again? And sometimes you can get kids to monologue because, if you ask them a formal question as a therapist kid, you get the, oh, seriously? But boy, in some open-ended questions, and then like close your mouth and just listen. You will be amazed that some kids will become that master of, well, what my teacher said is when we read the book that I had a really good point about, what this character was about. And then my friend said, well, I didn't see it that way. I saw it this way. And before you know it, you really get them to express something that they learned, as opposed to, how are you today? How was class? Good, fine. And what we always say, like, good and fine are not feelings.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is just a reminder about asking a better question, and then really just the importance of listening. I think Chris echoed it before. Sometimes what kids need is just to be heard. You can disagree, you can agree, you can validate, but give your chance, give your kid a chance to be heard. I think that's really important. I'd leave with that.
Yeah, and I think even looking at artwork or other things kids are using as forms of expression or play, like seeing what they're doing, is another way that they're expressing themselves. So even with the younger kids, of getting down on the floor and playing with them, or if they're doing art, doing that with them. Kids are also, kid therapist, Mr. Ververs as well, of kids are really will open up when it's playing over games or making dinner together, instead of it being like, spotlights on conversation. Activity together, kids are, they feel more comfortable opening up when it's not looking eye to eye sometimes. So engaging in something together can be really helpful. I think I had Jessica, you had something, and I also want to address, Honishi had a question in our chat too. So I want to make sure we get to those.
I was gonna say, I also do, I wonder, I wonder what lunch was like today, and to spark that curiosity. I feel like, the kids start going, well, it was like this and like this. So instead of saying, like you said, how was your day? It's like an open-ended, good, asking the right, like you said. But I also say, I wonder, and then I know with my own daughters, just all about it.
I used to ask the girls at dinner, what was the best thing that happened today at school?
Yeah.
And then, of course, what was the worst thing? And of course, it always seemed like the worst thing really sparked the conversation, because the kids were like, and then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But, like Jessica, getting to know your kid, or even Jean, you got to know your kid, and what are good starters and what are no-goes. Of where it just gets one word, and you learn from experience, all right, that's not going to get us anywhere, and you use that to your advantage.
Yeah.
Hanishi had a question about how do we help handle procrastination in elementary kids who've grown up in this situation. I think back to school and working with teachers will be really helpful in creating structure and accountability. I think a lot of students, I want to normalize that a lot of students have had difficulty staying with tasks and completing things on time during virtual learning. There's something about the accountability of somebody being in front of you saying, you haven't finished the worksheet, you need to get that done before we move on, that you've been able to hide a lot during virtual learning, right? And you can't hide as much in the classroom. They're also going to have a stronger relationship with each teacher, and that's going to be a motivator too. Whereas, you get a little more lost. Teachers have done a tremendous job, but it is just not the same virtually versus that in-person connection, looking eye to eye. I know my son has had some individual meetings with teachers virtually, which have helped in that regard. So I do think teacher connection will help. The accountability of in the classroom. Absolutely. Organizing their materials better. I think you just can't hide as much in person. So I do think that will really be helpful. Hanishi, did you want to say anything else about scheduling didn't work much, or it sounds like you've tried some strategies that weren't so helpful?
You could unmute yourself if you'd like to respond to Chris's question.
No, the thing is, we tried a couple of things like scheduling her task, putting her some timetable sort of thing, try to finish it by this day or this date or whatever. But she would always try to push it till the last second day of, or on the same day.
Yeah.
And turn out that I have to start with the thing so that she feels, oh, it has to be done by me. So she will start doing that after when I just like kind of getting into the thing. So that was something bothering me.
Yeah.
That what if she started to do the same thing in school and
You know,
are like not because I know it's hard to handle 24-25 kids all together and with the different kind of issues. And I was thinking that if there is some tips I can use to make her understand that this is her duty, her job to do on time. And one more thing I've seen that her this behavior made her less concentrated towards the task. It makes that whatever energy she used to have earlier when starting with the task, with the full mind and energy, by the day of deadline, she is under pressure and she don't perform that well. So
Yeah.
that's something I found, which is bothersome. So I thought if there is something that I can do, would be great for her.
I think, Hanishi, a couple thoughts would be, I'd be interested to see how your student does when she's back at school. Because one thing that's happening, I think some of our students, again, back to that control what you can, will kind of dig their heels in and say, well, I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to wait till the last minute. My son refused to wear glasses online when he needed them. Because they want to control something. They've had a lack of control over a lot of things. So it may be that your daughter just, kind of pushed it a little bit because it was something she could control. Another thought I had was, it's been really difficult for us as parents to have to be like a co-teacher and a parent and enforcer. That's a lot of roles. And I wonder, once back in the classroom, of relinquishing some of that to the teacher, that you might see your relationship and the stress improve, but also see your daughter addressing things a different way, because it's a lot for a parent to be setting all of that up. Handing some of that off to the teacher, you might see better results. I know that for myself too. It's hard to be the parent and a co-teacher and setting all the schedules. Teachers are really good at that with 24, 25 kids. It's amazing. This is what they do, and they do it really well. So I would encourage you to see how the year gets off to a start for your student with the teacher in person, and then strategize from there.
And I'd also wonder if she did hand in an assignment that, in you or your husband's opinion was less than, excellent. Allow it to occur, allow for natural consequences, and see what does happen when it's someone other than the parent in authority that says, I don't think this was your best work and I'm giving you a 4 instead of a 7. And then see what helps in terms of motivation to change the behavior, because she knows that she's like all good kids, they know exactly what buttons to press.
Yeah.
Because mom might stay up coloring that last little bit as opposed to letting her hand it in as is, and see what the process is.
Absolutely. I agree. Sometimes we have to let them
struggle.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to add few things this is very true. Sometimes what happened with me also, my kids sometimes they never listen to my whatever task I'm giving, they never listen. But if they go to school, if their teacher says give some task, they do it by her saying, or by seeing other children's
Yes.
their classmates. So it this happens.
And this is
So
why we're
it's not,
excited about them going back, because we don't have to
Yeah.
have this other role too. It's going to be
yes,
right.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So-
That's right.
And then your
Yeah.
response is, well, I wonder what the teacher will say when you hand this in.
Yes,
We'll wait and see.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Natural
for me,
consequences are a beautiful thing.
yeah.
Consequences.
Most of the time I say my kids are very naughty and blah blah blah, and but what their teachers say, oh, they are so nice and they are doing their job. I wonder, oh my God, is it happen? No one knows how they behave outside.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I think she's frozen. All right. Well, if there are any more questions or if there are any more comments, it is about 11 after the hour. So we will bid you all good night. I did want to tell you that with Chris's permission, we have this recorded and we would put it up on our Parsippany Library YouTube channel. And you can go and review it if you want to remember some of these wonderful tips that Chris has given us to help our kids and ourselves go back to school in person. So, Chris, thank you very much. This was an excellent program. I really appreciate the time that you put into this to give us such a good presentation. Onishi says thank you for the great talk. And Warren was over there clapping his hands. So thank you again, and good night, everyone.
All right. Good luck to everyone. We're
Good
in this
night.
together.
Thank you once
All
again.
right.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Just want to wait for everybody to